Right, hello everybody, welcome to the video. I'm going to be talking about 4 particular Joker stories that I've read. I'm going to be ranking them from worst to best. Actually, 2 of which I have physical copies here, and I'm going to be using them for visual aid. So the first one in the category of worst, which I'm not sure if this is controversial or not, but Death in the Family, right? This was written by, I believe, Jim Starlin, who I consider to be a bit of a hack fraud. He wrote the original Infinity War run. He also wrote this really bad like Thanos versus Hulk comic that I read in like 2014, and it was just terrible. It was really about Pip the Troll and this other character called like Annihilus or something. He was like a big terrible figure villain, you know what I mean? And it just, yeah, I felt ripped off when I read that because they fight in like half of one issue, Thanos and Hulk, and it was like in the lead up to Infinity War. I was reading it to try and get like some context, but yeah, it sucked anyway. And he wrote this, and I think it sucked, honestly. But Death in the Family, like, I assumed picking this up that this is going to be like a definitive Joker story, because this is a moment that's like talked about in comic books still to this very day, when the Joker killed Jason Todd. Spoiler alert, that's what happens in Death in the Family. That is the death in the Bat family. To start on a positive thing, I just opened it up here. I really love all the covers. The covers are great. Mike Mignola, the dude that draws Hellboy and writes Hellboy, did all the covers for these, and they're just fantastic. They're amazing. They look great. I don't know. I feel like he's like a disciple of, say, John Romita Jr. or Frank Miller in terms of his art style. It's kind of blocky and square, but I think it's great. The covers are really good, and it really suits Hellboy as well. But like the majority of this Death in the Family comic book is centered around Jason Todd finding his biological mother, which I guess, like, it's a good idea to have some like emotional stakes and get us invested in the character of Jason Todd in this particular run before he dies. But I don't know, I just personally wasn't that interested, because it's all very self-contained. The character is invented, introduced, and dies all within these like 6 issues. So it's like it's a closed circuit. It's not a major lore thing. And the fact that, you know, no one's ever really gone in comic books, everybody comes back from the dead. The fact that Jason Todd did come back from the dead does kind of undercut this whole thing. The art is great. I really like the art. The like 80s art, I think, is great. I don't know, it looks very Watchmen, this particular style. I really like the costume of Batman. We have the grey and blue costume, which is something I'd love to see return to. Maybe James Gunn could do that. If he has a different Batman in his Superman universe, he could bring in a silver and blue costume, a grey and blue costume. I don't know if people are ready for that, though. People aren't really willing to have a return to camp. See, I think just personally, I was never interested in the Bat family. I was interested in Batman in the same way I'm like interested in the Punisher, in that it's one singular character and it's all about him and his like inner monologue and the way he's dealing with this craziness around him and his own kind of craziness. You know what I mean? That's the best way to deal with Batman, is treat him like he's nearly like one of his villains. You know what I mean? And I feel like this does capture that. After Jason Todd dies, the Batman goes to maybe I'm jumping ahead of things, but Joker ends up the Iranian embassy for the UN. Iran elects the Joker to represent them in the United Nations. So they all meet up. They said the Joker goes to this UN meeting, and Bruce Wayne is there, and his intention is to kill the Joker. He's like, right, one of us is dying. I'm coming into this, and either me or him is not gonna survive. You killed my boy. You know what I mean? I'm not taking this anymore. Which is just, it's so funny. I can't get over the thought of like a writer in the 80s, Jim Starlin in particular, being like, oh yeah, I think Iran would do that. I think Iran would have someone like the Joker represent them on a world scale. But there's a really, really great moment that I love in this, where Bruce Wayne and the Joker face each other down when he's walking in, because Batman couldn't get to go in as Batman, because they also have Superman there to try and stop Batman from killing the Joker. So it's kind of, there's a whole lot going on, and that was the most interesting part of this to me, was once Jason Todd died, I was like, yes, then now we have Batman, Superman, and the Joker, and it's just wacky hijinks, and it was kind of fun. You know what I mean? I don't know, I enjoyed it, even though it was serious and dark. But yeah, the moment where they face off against each other, Bruce Wayne has an inner like thought of like, oh, I don't know if he recognizes me or not. I don't know if he knows that I'm Batman, because like the Joker stops walking and he stares at him for a minute, and it's really well drawn. I love the design of the Joker. He's always smiling, always has a huge grin. You know what I mean? The whole time he's drawn like a T shape nearly, or like an anchor or something, the shape of his head. But at the end of that confrontation, he just turns and walks away and starts laughing as he walks away. Very Joker. There's a point earlier on where, see, the reason why I don't like this as like a representation of the Joker is that it's kind of piggybacking off of the Killing Joke, and it's like he's just after getting out of Arkham after shooting Barbara Gordon, and he needs to like regain his wealth. So he's like doing heists and he's like selling things and he's like doing his best to try and hustle and get some money. And it's like, I don't know, I get that. I know they do that in The Dark Knight, but that's like the very first scene he gets some money, and then he just does his Joker shit. It just humanizes him a little bit too much when you're thinking about the Joker thinking about the logistics of the Joker funding his crime spree. I think that just kind of ruins the fun a little bit. I don't know. But in amongst him trying to like hustle for money, he steals a nuclear missile and disassembles it and reassembles it himself, and as a result it's like leaking. It's really funny. I don't know why that just struck me as quite hilarious. Like, you're gonna introduce nukes into this comic book world and Joker's gonna be fucking around with them, and it just only logically makes sense that he's not a technician of any kind. I don't know, I feel like this is very text heavy, this particular comic. I don't know, there's a lot of inner monologue, there's a lot of people talking to each other, there's a lot of exposition, and I know, you know, the argument could be made, oh well, it's an 80s comic, but I don't know, there's also stuff from the 80s that is more succinct and more to the point and less like heavy on the words, you know what I mean? Sometimes comics just need to be visual and they don't need to be heavily explained with lengthy fucking paragraphs of text. They're also kind of throwing Batman and Robin, before obviously he dies, they throw them into the Middle East and various different areas of the Middle East, and they go to like Ethiopia and stuff like that, and they're in amongst like real world, like actual things that happened, or like it's not just they're in Gotham City or Metropolis or fucking, you know what I mean, something like that. It reminded me of when The Punisher went to Northern Ireland and Garth Ennis wrote that. It just seemed too, it's odd to have these flamboyant, colourful characters and then throw them into very real situations. It doesn't particularly match with this. I don't know why. I think it's going too fast, and it's too focused on Tim Drake finding his mother, and it's like, it's not an interesting mystery because all three of the suspects of who could be his biological mother have all only been introduced in this one particular comic. So it's like, it's not like it's anybody that we know before, it's just characters that have been invented for this comic. We're figuring out which of the three is his biological mother, and he figures it out, and then he dies, and that's his whole arc in this comic. And the way he dies, right, I would have been led to believe by like the way people talk about this comic that the Joker beats Tim Drake to death with a crowbar. That is not what happens. He beats him up with a crowbar. He thinks he bet him to death, but he leaves him there and his mother tied to a bomb. And Robin comes back to consciousness. He was just unconscious, and then the bomb goes off, and that's how they die, right? I should probably talk about the fact that there's a whole thing going on here of apparently like people could call in and vote on whether or not Tim Drake was going to live or die. So this was like a democratic decision that was made by the fans. There's even there's 2 pages in this that are interesting. One is like the original ad with the number on it to call, and the other one was an alternate page where Batman carries out Robin and he's alive. That is one actual beautiful piece of artwork in this, I will say, is Batman carrying Tim Drake out of the building. I think I have understated how good the art is in this. The art in this is quite good. Kind of a funny moment where Batman, after Tim Drake dies, he's like super pissed off, and Superman shows up, and this is when Superman's trying to stop him from killing the Joker. Basically, he's a delegate, he has diplomatic immunity. It's so stupid, it's hilarious. So the government sends Superman there to make sure that Batman doesn't try and apprehend him, because he can't legally, apparently. Absolutely, it's ridiculous, I'm sorry. But there's a really cool moment where Superman shows up and he's telling him, listen Bruce, I can't let you do this, and Batman just like throws a punch full swing at Superman, and Superman kind of like, he rolls with it. Like, he looks like he's actually been hit. You know what I mean? Even though it wouldn't really do anything to Superman. You're lucky. Superman says, you're lucky I rolled with that. Otherwise, you would have broke all your knuckles or whatever. I can just see that they're bruised. And then Superman as well. Joker releases a bunch of Joker toxin in the UN, which is like, obviously that's what's going to happen. And Superman inhales all the Joker toxin into himself, which I think is great. I think that's pretty cool. I don't know. I always like creative uses of Superman's powers. Some of the drawings of Middle Eastern and African people are questionable. Is questionable is just the word I'm going to use. I don't know. They're like, it's obviously it's serialized comics from the 80s. They're not going to have a definitive wrapped up ending at the end, but Joker kind of gets away, and Batman isn't sure whether he's alive or dead or where he is. And it's like, Batman even has a line about that. This is how things always are with the Joker, unresolved. It's a bit of a cop-out. Like, you could have had him get thrown into Arkham. You could have had Batman, like, savagely beat him, and Superman arrives in time to, like, stop him from killing him and have him, like, be... There could have been so many other things you could have done to round out this particular 6-issue arc, but it just ends with... we have minused Tim Drake from the story, and everything else is the same. You know what I mean? Continuity wise, the Joker, like, nothing else has really changed. This particular trade paperback was it also has A Lonely Place of Dying, I think it's called. Yeah, and it's basically the introduction of the next Robin after Tim Drake. I might be saying the wrong Robin name in this whole last video, and it's not Tim Drake, it's a different fucking name. Jason Todd is the one that died. Oh no, whatever, doesn't matter. But, like, because of the fact that these first 6 issues were so whack, I'm not interested in reading the second 6 in this compendium. I don't know, 2 faces in it. It's written by different people, and the art looks not as cool, not as polished, not as solid, but, you know, it's the introduction of Tim Drake after Jason Todd has died. I can't believe I made the whole fucking review saying the wrong name of the wrong Robin. Oh my god. So I'm going to give a quick kind of honorable mention to a Joker comic that I didn't enjoy. It was by Brian Azzarello, and just I kind of quickly skimmed through this one because I haven't read it recently, but it just sticks out in my mind as not one that I enjoy. I think the art is, like, gross. I don't know. He's that same fella seems to have done the Rorschach before Watchmen art that Brian Azzarello also wrote. So, like, I'm not really interested in reading that, even though I have it there. But it's uncanny valley. It's too close to realistic, and it's too literally dark in terms of, like, the color palette of this particular artist is just brown. I feel like everything is very brown. You know what I mean? And, like, they use Heath Ledger's likeness as the Joker in this comic book, which obviously didn't fucking age well, but I don't like that. Typically that very much takes me out of it. They did that with, again, some Punisher comics where they drew John Barenthal, the Walking Dead guy, as the Punisher, and I didn't fucking like that. I don't like, you know what I mean? The only one where that gets a pass is Nick Fury looking like Samuel L. Jackson, because they ripped off his likeness first. They started drawing him as Samuel L. Jackson before Sam Jackson was ever cast in the Avengers, so that's the only one that gets a pass, right? Every other time they draw an actor's likeness in a comic book, I don't like it. Read some Darth Vader comics recently, and they had a lot of flashbacks to Hayden Christensen, and it was like, it's just weird. It's like, you know what that guy really looks like, so don't try and recreate it. Make your own fucking thing. And it's like capitalizing off the success of The Dark Knight, you know what I mean? And I think what I learned from, or what I think I took away from my most recent watch of The Dark Knight, and when I think about this comic, is that Joker works best as a piece in a puzzle. Like, he is not badass, man. Terrible metaphor. I don't like saying this, but he's the Joker in the pack. You know what I mean? He's like an element in a bigger story, and he causes chaos and disruption. But it's really it's a question of how can one man cause this much mayhem? You know what I mean? But it's not about him, you know what I mean? I feel like Joker works more to me in The Dark Knight, where you also have Two-Face going on. You also have this corruption going on in the GCPD, and you know what I mean? Like, I think when you solely focus on the Joker too much, I think it kind of takes away some of the mystique of it, you know what I mean? And I don't know, it's kind of an interesting framing of it's a dude that just got out of Arkham, I think, or maybe Blackgate Prison, and he's now Joker's goon. Joker's, like, recruited him. Maybe I can't remember if he's, like, a former gang member of the Joker gang, but basically it's from the perspective of this guy and his interactions with the Joker, which is interesting. We don't get any inner monologue for the Joker, which would be heinous. That character kills himself in the end. The design of the Batman and that, it, again, very brown, but it looks like the Gotham by Gaslight Batman, and it's like, this isn't in Victorian London, and it's like the way it ends, the two of them are just beating the shit out of each other, and the main character just jumps off a bridge. You can't deal with it anymore, which is how I felt reading it. The one thing that always made me remember this comic and made me not like it is the fact that the Joker rapes a woman in it, just like recreationally, just like in the middle of something else. It's just, and it's so like, it's just like a throwaway thing. He's just stepping out of a taxi and you see like a woman's leg, and it's not directly stated, but it's very, very heavily implied. And it's like, I don't know, that I feel like the Joker is the only person he wants to have sex with is Batman, you know. But that's my two negative ones. So the way I'm framing this is worse than best. So those two negative ones, I'm gonna go two positive ones now. I'm gonna have a little smoke break so I don't run out of steam midway through the video. So keep at it. I'll be back. I don't know what you heard about me, but a bitch can't get $1 on me. Okay, yeah, so welcome back. I had my smoke break. I'm nice and refreshed. My voice might be a little bit more, you know, podcasty, radio-y. Welcome to the Spa Crumpet Hour, the Crumpcast. No, but right, what we're doing now, there was a dude out there with a fucking chainsaw, I assume doing a Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and he just stopped as soon as I hit the record button, but I'm sure he's going to start as soon as I like get into it, as soon as I start talking properly. So I'm just going to briefly touch on The Killing Joke. I'm not going to talk about this too much because this one's been talked to death. Really good video by H Bomber Guy about the Killing Joke animated movie, in which he also talks about the comic book, obviously, and he puts it pretty well. I'm going to kind of just skim through quick points because it's going to help me talk about the comic I'm going to review after this. I feel like Alan Moore himself has said, there's the chainsaw, someone's getting, I'm going to try and filter that out. The audio might be weird because I'm trying to filter out a body being desecrated out there. But Alan Moore in recent years has said how he feels about The Killing Joke is that he was hanging very heavy things and very real world, dark, grim, like serious topics on these flimsy two-dimensional cartoon characters. That would be Alan Moore's own reflection on The Killing Joke. I've read it a good few times. I don't have an issue with it. It's just people talk about the Joker's origin is a multiple choice. You know what I mean? He's a character who we don't know how he got where he is and the way he is, and he doesn't even have a name. He is the Joker, and that's it. Whereas like this comic book and the Batman 89 movie, they're giving a definitive origin, and even actually the Joaquin Phoenix movie, they're giving definitive origins to the Joker and who he is and his name and how he got the way he is. And it's like, I don't know, I feel like that demystifies the character. Like the Joker is almost like he's like a folk tale now. He's been around so long. He's like Dracula or something like that. You know what I mean? He should have that air of like mysticism to him, rather than here is a guy who was a comedian and his wife died and he fell into a vat of acid and now his skin is like that and it made him crazy and he's the Joker now. You know what I mean? I don't know. I like that's just a reflection on growing up and reading more Joker stories and like engaging with like The Dark Knight again recently. I think that's definitely coloring my whole view of this, is that I watched The Dark Knight quite recently. The whole thing of everything in comics being reversed eventually, but Barbara Gordon being put in a wheelchair, that's actually something that I didn't talk about in my Death in the Family review. There's a really poignant moment of Jason Todd's funeral, not Tim Drake, Jason Todd. That's hilarious. I'm wearing a Marvel t-shirt and saying the wrong Robin name for the first half of the video. That's great. I hope I bait people into being angry in the comments. But there's a moment at the funeral where the only people that are there are Commissioner Gordon, Barbara Gordon in the wheelchair, Alfred and Bruce, and that's it. They're the only people, and the padre or the priest or whatever. They're the only people that are at the funeral. And there's like some line about his life was too short to have made a huge circle of connections of people. You know what I mean? Like, that was quite sad. I don't know, the way they put that, I was like, okay, that was the one most poignant moment in the whole entire Death in the Family comic. But yeah, like what happened to Barbara Gordon is reversed eventually, and she goes back to being Batgirl. And you know, she was, I think I really liked the Oracle era, but just because of the Arkham games, you know what I mean, she was the person in the chair. So I like that Batman has that character, and that it's not Alfred. Alfred does enough already. Alfred changes the bed sheets and makes the tea in the morning. No, like, it's not a bad comic. It's not a bad comic. Like, Alan Moore is really good. Just again, like what I said about the Brian Azzarello thing, I don't think, and the Joaquin Phoenix, both movies, I don't think a story specifically about just the Joker really is that interesting. You know what I mean? I think you throw him into a universe that already exists and watch him make chaos. So I don't know, that could just be a preference thing, but I am putting it higher than Death in the Family and Brian Azzarello's Joker. So yeah. And the reason why, Right, I'm grabbing another physical copy of a comic book over here. The reason why I brought up The Killing Joke a lot is because I notice a lot of parallels between that and this. This is, well, I'm going to have a picture on that side of the screen. Don't need to show it to you. It is Arkham Asylum by Grant Morrison. It has a subtitle. It's written, the font is so weird. A serious house on a serious earth. Sorry, the font on that is strange looking. The font in all of this comic is strange. I feel like, I don't know if this is going to be a really hard one to justify as like my favorite Joker comic of all time. Again, recency is a big factor. I read this just the other day in one sitting, like start to finish. I couldn't put it down. I haven't felt that way about a comic book since I got the first volume of Sweet Tooth. When I got that and I was reading that, I just couldn't stop and I had to read all of it, you know what I mean? And it was like that when I started reading Arkham Asylum. Grant Morrison wrote a JLA run in it could have also been the 80s or it could have been the 90s, where it was like a whole bunch of shape-shifting Martians arrived and they were pretending to be like this version of the Justice League from another planet, but they were actually just like evil Martians there to do evil Martian stuff. Batman actually saves the day in that. It's great. He's the one that discovers the secret, and that you just have to light them on fire, essentially. They're as strong as Superman. You can shoot them with 1,000,000 bullets. You can hit them with a train, but if you set them on fire, they're gonna fucking die. It's great. It's really funny. I feel like everyone shines in that JLA comic. But yeah, I hadn't read a lot of Grant Morrison. Years ago, I read like maybe the first 3 or 4 issues of All-Star Superman, which I now have a copy of up there, that I'm going to get around to, that I'm excited about. And I never finished it just because someone loaned it to me, and I felt like giving it back to them when I wasn't getting into it. I wasn't a massive Superman fan at the time. I feel like I read The Death of Superman recently, and I feel like that has recontextualized even the appearance of Superman in Death in the Family. I feel like I'm getting that character a little bit more, so I'm more open to Superman now as a result of Grant Morrison. But yeah, I'm just bringing those up because those are acclaimed runs by this guy. But Arkham Asylum, like, I know if you haven't actually read it, you're probably just thinking this is like what the video game is based off of, and not really, you know what I mean? Kind of, in the whole sense that it's lunatics are running the asylum kind of thing, but it's a lot smaller scale, you know what I mean? It's a lot more real than the Arkham Asylum game. I think there's a lot of proclamations on the back and in the inside of this. This is the greatest best-selling graphic novel of all time. And I'm like, yeah, because it says Batman Arkham Asylum on the cover. People are that was one of the most popular fucking games ever. People who played that in Arkham City are gonna see that and be like, oh, that'll be a good comic, you know what I mean? I'm vaguely aware of that. And then, right, it turns out to be a gateway drug. That's what I refer to this comic. And I also used to refer to Dark Knight Returns. I always do that. Dark Knight Returns and Killing Joke. I used to use those as gateway drugs to get people into comic books. Like, you read something and you're like, this is like a novel or a movie or something. This isn't the normal episodic, like, same, like, kind of structure as every other book that you're reading that's like month to month. It's like, yeah, it's phenomenal. It's really, really good. The art it looks like art that was done by like a crazy person, and I feel like that's intentional because a lot of this book is about madness and descending into madness, which similarly to Killing Joke, it's about that, but it's a lot grim. It's a lot more grim and gritty and less two-dimensional. I feel like this is an elephant in the room that I do want to talk about, is the fact that Grant Morrison maintains that Alan Moore stole the whole thing of being a magician from him, right? That's apparently a thing that Grant Morrison is like one of those like wizard guys that practices magic, and Alan Moore also does that now. Grant Morrison is like, I did that first. And I feel like Batman Arkham Asylum is like a better version of The Killing Joke. It's like in so many ways. It's like, In The Killing Joke, the point is that the Joker is trying to turn Commissioner Gordon insane, just to prove that anybody can be turned insane. All it takes is one bad day, right? Whereas in this, it's like the Joker is trying to turn the Batman insane, which makes a lot more fucking sense. You know what I mean? That's a lot more like fucking like congruent to the dynamic of the two characters. You know? The art, sorry, I started saying it. The art is just such a big part of why this is great, and the layout and the way it's structured. It's just, I said it's like a crazy person's art, but it's also like, did you ever see art done by people who are like on psychedelic drugs? You know what I mean? It's like that, and it's really, really good. And it's, I know I complained about Brian Azzarello's being dark, but it's dark in that it's brown and dark grey. Whereas this is dark in that it's heavy inks and blacks. Like Batman, for the most part, you have very little detail on him. You just see kind of like a silhouette of his cape and his cowl. You see his mouth a lot. He expresses through his mouth, but it's all blacks, and it's like he's a shadow, and that's the way Batman wants to be perceived. In terms of expressing with the mouth, there's one moment where Batman, maybe this is more of a Batman comic that I enjoyed than a Joker comic, but Batman, he's like doing something incredibly violent to Killer Croc. He's like stabbing him with a spear, and he has a big fucking grin on his face, and he's loving it, and he's happy about it, and he's having fun. There's another moment where a psychiatrist at the hospital kills a villain who's trying to kill Batman, who basically has him on his back, and Batman is like, he got what he deserved. So it's like, this is a very, and the way the fight with Killer Croc ended is like he just threw him out a window. So it's like, it's ambiguous as to whether or not he's still alive. So this is a, but that could be the point of the comic, is that Batman has been pushed so far at this point that he is playing fast and loose with his one rule. He's being loosey-goosey with that as a result of the torment that the Joker has put on him. And the way that he does it is so much more like subtle and clever than The Killing Joke. He does it with a psychologist. He has a psychologist therapist there, and he has them do like a Rorschach test with Batman, and he has them do a fucking word association thing as well, and that seems to genuinely make Batman uncomfortable and scared that he's being somewhat analyzed. It's really funny, and like that's the thing about the Joker, is that he is a funny fucking guy. He's like constantly cracking wise in this, but it's like really like mean spirited, obviously, and it's like really fucking like, a lot of it is really dark and grim and like depressing, but like he's insulting people all the time in many ways. This is, in terms of what I said about, again, going back to Death in the Family, the Joker has a line in that where he's like, he talks about Batman, he says he makes life worth living. So that circles back around to my thing of Joker's gay for Batman. Maybe he's just in love with him. Maybe Joker's asexual, whatever. The Joker rape in Brian Azzarello thing made me uncomfortable. So yeah, maybe he's just in love with Batman. But Joker in this makes multiple like openly gay comments like towards Batman, and I think he might have done it towards somebody else at some other point, and it's clearly making people uncomfortable. But as a portrayal of the Joker, it's funny. It's funny in the context of this. The asylum's been overtaken. There's a bunch of fucking hostages. All the villains there want a piece of Batman, and Joker's just like grabbing Batman on the ass and calling him honey, and you know what I mean? It's just it's funny, and it's funny in the midst of this super dark comic. I haven't even talked about the fall of, I think his name's Amadeus Arkham. It's his descent into madness, the guy who made Arkham Asylum, and the reason why he went insane. And it's very like, very much like what a writer would do, is that Grant Morrison found this like one line of obscure details about how that guy went crazy because of the stock market collapse in the 20s. But Grant Morrison also read that character's wife had been killed prior, and he was like, wait, that surely makes more sense for a descent into madness than a fucking stock market crash. So that's kind of, maybe I'm not, I've been, see, this is how you know I really enjoy something, is when I'm being respectful of spoilers, because I do actually want people to read it. I've talked a lot about this without even like flicking through it or opening it. I'm gonna have a quick flick through it. That's what I was doing with Death of the Family. I need a drink from my knockoff Stanley cup that I got from Penny's. The lettering. This is something that I don't think I've ever once noticed in a comic book and thought was cool. The lettering, right? The lettering for the Joker in this is great. He doesn't have speech bubbles the way other people do. He just has his red text is on the page with a little dash pointing to his mouth. Everyone else is confined to a bubble, but the Joker just has, and it's like scrawled. It looks like it's been scratched in blood or something. It's red. and his hair is like it's so vibrantly green and bright, and like it's flowing in some scenes, and it really makes it stand out against all these heavy blacks. Like the art is like an oil painting, and as well with the lettering, Batman, which I've never seen this done before. Batman's speech bubbles are black with white text on the inside. I thought that was fucking cool. I don't know why that has never been done before, or I've never seen that before, but it was fucking cool. Batman is like, it's horrific the way Batman, there's at one point just some dude who's crazy and like clearly deformed is like trying to like talk to Batman. He's like, Batman, please help me. Like, you're the only person that can help me. You're Batman. And Batman's like, stop touching me, get away from me. And he's running away because of all the torment that Joker's put on him. And then the guy grabs him again, and Batman just like fucking does his knee. He just like breaks the guy's fucking leg, and it's graphic as fuck. And it's like the dude like doesn't even scream that much. Like, it's fucked. And like the whole thing, every time Batman arrives to one of the villains that allegedly, according to Joker, want a piece of him, but that's not entirely, we don't, you know, Batman just goes around terrorizing basically the inmates of Arkham Asylum on the Joker's mind game. And most of the time, except for like Killer Croc and Mad Hatter, every time a villain encounters Batman, they're like deathly afraid. They're like, oh no, oh my god, Jesus, I'm sorry. It's like, it's fucking great. I think like this is like one of my favorite like portrayals of like Batman ever. I'm flicking through it now. I think I might end it there because I don't want to go into too much spoilers. I want you to actually fucking read this comic book. This is like one of the things that I'm actually recommending. I very rarely, I think, in any of my media be like, or any of my videos be like, oh, you should definitely check this out. But this is one that you should definitely fucking check out. And I'm sure I'm missing out on a bunch of symbolism. There's stuff going on with tarot cards. Which again, you know, Grant Morrison is a magician, so I'm sure there's supposed to be some symbolism there with that. Two-Face plays a surprisingly massive role in this thematically, and in The Killing Joke, Two-Face is there, and he's split in the middle with a bar, and the bar is covering the border of the fucked up face and the normal face, and that's just a throwaway image at the start to establish the whole idea of duality, the two sides of the same coin, that Batman and Joker are like two faces, like Batman and Joker in one person. And it's showing that these two people might not be that dissimilar from each other if you can distill them down into a singular character who has both of their traits. But like that, as I said, that's a throwaway thing, and in means of making my argument that this is Killing Joke but better, is Two-Face's role in this becomes like, I'm not going to do spoilers, but I really like the design of Two-Face. Two-Face, it's just the face. Normally you see it and it's like, a lot of the time, maybe it's just the fact that he's dressed, you don't normally see it, but he has his shirt off in this, and you see that it's just like, it's pretty bad and it's pretty like graphic, but it's like, it's not terrible. It's not like you know what I mean? Some of them you see it and it's so grotesque and fucked up. Whereas this, I feel like they went out of their way to make it look a little bit less scary and more like humanized Two-Face a little bit. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say. I think I've talked for long enough. I have 37 minutes worth of audio. I wonder how much of that I'm going to cut out in the video. Yeah, thanks for fucking watching, I guess. Joker 2 was alright. I didn't mind Joker 2. The fact that everyone was angry about it made me laugh, and that's what made me enjoy it. When I watch something that I know everyone hates and is angry about, I laugh about it because I am the Joker the whole time. There you go, that's the ending. Thanks for watching.